Park Tiho sat in the back row of the auction hall and watched aliens bid on junk. The room was full of strange creatures. Some had 4 arms. Some had scales. Some floated in tanks of green liquid. But none of them looked at the human mechanic sitting alone in the corner. That was fine with Tiho. He was not here to make friends. He was here to find something cheap. The auction hall was on Kepler 7, a space station that had seen better days. The lights flickered sometimes. The air smelled like rust and old food, but it was the only place where a man with 12,000 credits could hope to buy something useful. Tiho was 34 years old. He had black hair that he never combed and hands covered in old scars from years of fixing machines. Back on Earth in Korea, he had been a military engineer. He had fixed tanks and aircraft and things that most people never saw. Then he came to space looking for opportunity. He found debt instead. His repair shop had been destroyed 6 months ago when a cargo ship crashed into the docking bay. The insurance company said it was not their problem. The station authorities said it was not their problem. Everyone said it was not their problem. So Tiho lost everything. Now he needed to start again. But starting again required money, and money required tools, and tools required an auction. The alien running the auction was a Torvaki. It had gray skin and 3 eyes that moved independently of each other. It spoke in a flat voice that the translator in Tiho's ear turned into boring words. "Next item," the Torvaki said. "Lot 47, one abandoned facility on the moon Vora 9, former property of the Melvari species, all contents included. Starting bid is 50,000 credits." The room went quiet, not the normal quiet of people thinking. This was a different quiet. This was the quiet of fear. Tiho looked around. The aliens were not bidding. They were not even looking at the screen that showed the facility. Some of them made strange gestures with their hands or tentacles. One alien actually left the room. The Torvaki auctioneer waited. Nobody spoke. 40,000, the auctioneer said, lowering the price. Silence. 30,000. More silence. Tiho leaned forward in his seat. He did not understand what was happening. The facility on the screen looked huge. It had multiple buildings and what appeared to be a large hangar. Even if it was empty, the metal alone would be worth more than 30,000 credits. 20,000, the auctioneer said. There was something in its voice now. Frustration, maybe, or embarrassment. Tiho raised his hand. What is wrong with it? Every alien in the room turned to look at him. He felt their eyes on his skin like cold water. The auctioneer blinked all 3 eyes. The facility belonged to the Melvari. So, the Melvari are extinct. They died out 400 years ago. That does not answer my question. An alien near the front made a hissing sound. Human does not know about the Melvari curse. Tiho shook his head. I do not believe in curses. The room erupted in whispers. The translator in his ear could not keep up with all the different languages, but he caught words like foolish and death wish and typical human. The auctioneer cleared its throat. The bid is 20,000. Does anyone wish to bid? Silence. 15,000. Tiho did the math in his head. He had 12,000 credits. That was everything he had saved in the past 6 months. If he spent it all and the facility was worthless, he would have nothing. But if the facility had tools or equipment he could sell, he could make his money back many times over. 12,000, he said. The auctioneer looked at him with something like pity. 12,000 credits. Does anyone wish to bid higher? Nobody moved. Sold to the human for 12,000 credits. Tiho stood up and walked to the front of the room to complete the paperwork. Aliens moved out of his way like he was carrying a disease. He did not care. He had just bought an entire facility for the price of 3 months' rent. After the auction, he found Yoon Hae-jin waiting for him outside. She was leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Hai-Jin was a cargo pilot. She was also the closest thing T-Ho had to a friend on this station. "I heard you bought the Melvari place," she said. "Good news travels fast." "That is not good news, T-Ho. That is a death sentence." T-Ho walked past her toward the docking bay. She followed him, her boots clicking on the metal floor. "The Melvari were not just any species," Hai-Jin continued. "They were strange, secretive. They never shared their technology with anyone. And then one day they all died, every single one of them. Nobody knows why. That does not mean their garage is cursed. Every species in the galaxy refuses to touch their stuff. You do not find that suspicious." T-Ho stopped walking and turned to face her. "I find it convenient. It means I got a good deal." Hai-Jin sighed. She was about the same age as T-Ho, with short hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many bad deals go wrong. They had met 2 years ago when T-Ho fixed her ship's engine for half the normal price. She had been bringing him repair jobs ever since. "At least let me fly you there," she said. "If you are going to die, I want to see it happen." "Your concern is touching." "I am serious. Vora 9 is 3 days away. My schedule is empty, and I want to make sure you do not do something stupid." T-Ho thought about it. He had planned to take a transport shuttle, but Hai-Jin's cargo ship would be faster and more comfortable. "Fine," he said, "but I am not paying for fuel." "You cannot afford fuel. You just spent everything on a haunted junkyard." They walked together to her ship. It was an old cargo vessel called the Sky Dream. The paint was faded and there were dents in the hull, but the engine ran smooth. T-Ho had made sure of that. The journey to Vora 9 took 3 days, just as Hai-Jin had said. They passed the time playing cards and arguing about whether T-Ho had made a terrible mistake. By the time they reached the moon, they had argued the same points so many times that they had stopped talking altogether. Vora 9 was a dead world. Gray dust covered everything. There was no atmosphere, no water, no life, just rocks and craters and silence. The facility appeared on the scanner before they could see it with their eyes. It was massive, much bigger than it had looked in the auction photos. Several buildings were connected by covered walkways. The main structure was half buried in gray dust, like the moon was trying to swallow it. "There it is," Hai-Jin said. "Your 12,000 credit mistake." T-Ho said nothing. He was staring at the readings on the scanner. "What?" Hai-Jin asked. "The scanner is picking up energy signatures." "That is impossible. The facility has been abandoned for 400 years." "I know." They landed the ship near the main entrance. T-Ho put on his space suit and checked his tools. He had a flashlight, a scanner, and a basic repair kit. He also had a small pistol, just in case. "I am coming with you," Hai-Jin said. "I thought you did not want to catch the Melvari curse." "I changed my mind. Someone needs to document your stupidity." They walked together across the gray dust toward the facility doors. The doors were huge, made of some dark metal that T-Ho did not recognize. They were sealed tight. T-Ho examined the lock. It was old technology, but well-made. He spent 20 minutes working on it before the doors finally groaned open. Inside it was dark. Their flashlights cut through the blackness, revealing a large entrance hall covered in dust. Everything was silent. They walked deeper into the facility. They found repair bays with old equipment. They found storage rooms with empty shelves. They found offices with chairs sized for bodies that no longer existed. But the energy signatures were getting stronger. "It is coming from below," T-Ho said, looking at his scanner. "There is something underneath us." They searched for an hour before they found it. A hidden door behind a wall panel. Beyond the door was an elevator shaft that went straight down into darkness. T-Ho looked at Hai-Jin. She looked at him. "This is the part where smart people turn around and leave," she said. T-Ho smiled. "Good thing I am not smart." He stepped into the elevator and pressed the button. The machinery groaned to life after 400 years of silence, and slowly, the elevator began to descend into the unknown. The elevator went down for a long time. Tiho watched the numbers on the display panel change. 100 meters, 200, 300. The machinery made sounds that worried him, but it kept moving. Hyjin stood beside him with her arms crossed. She had not said anything since they started descending. Her face was hard to read in the dim light. 800 meters, Tiho said when the elevator finally stopped. We are deep underground. The doors opened slowly. Cold air rushed in, carrying a smell that was old but not unpleasant, like a museum that had been closed for centuries. Tiho stepped out first. His flashlight swept across the space in front of him, and then he stopped. He stopped moving. He stopped breathing. He stood completely still. "What is it?" Hyjin asked from behind him. Then she stepped out and saw it too. They were standing in a hangar, but calling it a hangar was like calling the ocean a puddle. The space was enormous. It stretched out so far that their flashlights could not reach the walls. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness. And filling this impossible space were ships, dozens of ships. "This cannot be real," Hyjin whispered. Tiho started walking. His legs moved on their own. He walked toward the nearest ship and touched its hull with his gloved hand. The metal was cold but solid, real. The ship was unlike anything he had seen before. It was sleek and curved, made of a dark material that seemed to absorb light. On its side were symbols in a language he did not recognize. "That is a Melvari phase runner," Hyjin said. Her voice was shaking. "I have seen pictures in museums. They said none of them survived. There are 3 of them here." They walked deeper into the hangar. Every few steps revealed new wonders. There were ships from species Tiho had never heard of. Ships with strange shapes that should not be able to fly. Ships that were beautiful and ships that were terrifying. "These are Torvaki dreadnought fighters," Hyjin said, pointing to a row of angular vessels. "The Torvaki government has been searching for these for 200 years. They think they were destroyed in the Great War." They were wrong. They kept walking. Tiho counted the ships as they went, 10, 20, 30, 40. And then he saw something that made his heart stop. It was a human ship. Not just any human ship, but an old one, very old. The design was from before modern times, from when humans first started exploring space. On the side, faded but still readable, were the words Genesis Ark Colony Ship 7. "No," Hyjin said. "No, that is not possible." "What is it?" The Genesis Arks were the first colony ships from Earth. They were supposed to establish human settlements across the galaxy. Colony Ship 7 disappeared 200 years ago with 10,000 people on board. Everyone thought it was destroyed. Tiho walked up to the ship. It was massive, designed to carry thousands of people through deep space. The hull was damaged in places but mostly intact. "It is empty now," Hyjin said, checking her scanner. "No life signs, but the computers might still have data. We might be able to find out what happened to the colonists." Tiho nodded, but he was already thinking about something else. He was thinking about what all these ships meant. He pulled out his scanner and started cataloging everything. The scanner could identify ship types and estimate values based on galactic databases. It took him 3 hours to scan everything in the hangar. When he was done, he sat down on the dusty floor and stared at the number on his screen. "What does it say?" Hyjin asked. 2.3 trillion credits. "What?" "The total estimated value of everything in this hangar is 2.3 trillion credits." Hyjin sat down next to him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The number was too big to understand. It was more money than most planets had. It was more money than entire species had. "You bought this for 12,000 credits, Hyjin finally said. "Yes. You are the richest human in the galaxy right now." Probably. Hai-Jin started laughing. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who has seen something so impossible that their brain cannot process it. The Melvari were not cursed, she said when she stopped laughing. They were collectors. They gathered all these ships from across the galaxy and hid them here, and everyone was too scared to look. But why? Why collect all these ships and then let themselves go extinct? I do not know. Maybe there are records somewhere in the facility. T-Ho stood up and looked at the ships around him. Each one was a treasure. Each one had history and value beyond imagination, and all of it belonged to him now. We need to tell someone, Hai-Jin said. This discovery is too big to keep secret. If we tell people, they will come and try to take it. They will find out eventually. When you start selling ships, people will ask questions. She was right. T-Ho knew she was right. He could not keep this secret forever, but he wanted a few days to understand what he had found before the galaxy came knocking at his door. Let me contact my cousin, he said. He works for the Galactic Commerce Authority. He can tell us what the law says about ownership. You have a cousin in the Commerce Authority. His name is Bae Sung-kai. We grew up together in Korea. He became a lawyer and I became a mechanic. He always said I was the stupid one in the family. T-Ho sent a message to Sung-kai using the ship's communication system. Because of the distance, it would take several hours for the message to arrive and several more hours for a reply. In the meantime, he and Hai-Jin explored more of the hangar. They found smaller rooms connected to the main space, storage areas filled with parts and equipment, workshops with tools that were still in perfect condition, and in one room they found data terminals with files in the Melvari language. We need someone who can read this, Hai-Jin said. Do you know anyone? I know someone who might know someone, a researcher at the university on Kepler 7. T-Ho nodded. The more people they involved, the harder the secret would be to keep, but they needed answers. By the time Sung-Kai's reply came, they had explored most of the facility. T-Ho read the message on his communicator while sitting in the pilot seat of one of the phase runners. What does he say? Hai-Jin asked. He says the sale was legal. The Melvari had no surviving members to inherit their property. Under galactic law, abandoned property can be sold at auction after 50 years. The auction house followed all the proper procedures. So the ships are really yours. Legally, yes. But Sung-Kai warns that legal ownership does not mean safe ownership. He says I should expect challenges from governments and corporations who want what I have. He says I need to be very careful. That night they slept on the Sky Dream. T-Ho could not sleep. He kept thinking about all the ships in the hangar below. He kept thinking about what they were worth and what they meant. In the morning, Hai-Jin checked the communication system and found something that made her face go pale. T-Ho, she said, we have a problem. What kind of problem? Someone intercepted our messages. We have received 17 communications in the last 6 hours. 3 are from alien corporations offering to buy the facility. 5 are from criminal organizations threatening to kill us if we do not cooperate. 2 are from governments demanding that we surrender the ships to their custody. And 7 are from news organizations wanting interviews. T-Ho took the communicator and read the messages. Some were polite, some were threatening. One was from a group calling themselves the Syndicate and it simply said, "We know where you are. We are coming." "We need to leave," Hai-Jin said, "right now." "I am not leaving. This is my property." "You cannot fight off an army with a repair kit and a pistol." "Then help me find another way." Hai-Jin looked at him for a long moment. He could see her thinking, calculating, weighing the options. Finally, she sighed. "The Melvari were paranoid about security," she said. "A species that collects treasures like this must have had defenses. Help me find the control room." They went back into the facility and searched for hours. Finally, in a small room near the main hangar, they found what they were looking for. A control panel covered in dust, with screens that flickered to life when T-Ho touched them. "I cannot read Melvari," he said. "Neither can I, but look at these symbols." Hyjin pointed at the screens. "These look like weapon systems, and these look like shield generators." T-Ho studied the panel. He was a mechanic. He had spent his whole life learning how machines worked. The Melvari technology was different from anything he had seen, but the basic principles were the same. Power systems, control circuits, output mechanisms. He started pressing buttons, following his instincts. The screens changed. Something hummed deep in the walls of the facility. "What did you do?" Hyjin asked. "I think I activated the defense systems." Outside, on the surface of the moon, ancient weapons rose from the dust. Shield generators powered up for the first time in 400 years. Sensor arrays began scanning the space around Vora 9. T-Ho looked at the screens and smiled. He was still in danger. The whole galaxy was going to come for his treasure, but now at least he could fight back. "Send a message to Sung Kai," he told Hyjin. "Tell him to come here as fast as he can, and contact that researcher you know. We need to understand what the Melvari were really doing." Hyjin nodded and started working on the communications. T-Ho stayed at the control panel, learning the systems, preparing for what was coming. The galaxy wanted his ships. They would learn that taking something from a stubborn human mechanic was not as easy as they thought. The first attack came 3 days later. T-Ho was in the control room when the alarm started screaming. The screens showed 6 ships approaching Vora 9 at high speed. They were small and fast, the kind of ships that mercenaries used. "They are not responding to communication," Hyjin said from her station. "They are heading straight for the facility." "Then they have made their choice." T-Ho had spent 3 days learning the Melvari defense systems. He did not understand everything, but he understood enough. His hands moved across the control panel with confidence. The first weapon fired. A beam of blue light shot up from the moon's surface and hit the lead mercenary ship. The ship's shields flickered and died. A second beam destroyed the engine. The other mercenary ships tried to scatter, but they were too slow. The Melvari weapons tracked them with terrible precision. In less than 2 minutes, all 6 ships were disabled and drifting in space. "Do not destroy them," T-Ho said. "Let them float there as a message to others." Hyjin looked at him with new respect. "Where did you learn to fight?" "I was a military engineer. I did not just fix weapons, I learned how they worked." The mercenary attack was just the first test. Over the next week, more enemies came. Pirates, corporate security teams, even a small fleet from an alien government that claimed the Torvaki dreadnoughts belonged to them. T-Ho dealt with each threat the same way. He gave them one warning. When they ignored the warning, he disabled their ships and let them drift. He never killed anyone. He wanted the galaxy to know that he was not a murderer. He was just a man protecting what was his. During this time, Sung Kai arrived on a transport ship. T-Ho's cousin had changed since they last met. His hair was turning gray at the edges, and he wore expensive clothes that looked out of place on the dusty moon. "You look terrible," Sung Kai said when they met at the facility entrance. "You look like a lawyer." "I am a lawyer, and right now I am the only thing standing between you and 100 lawsuits." Sung Kai had brought files, thousands of files, legal documents from corporations and governments, all claiming ownership of various ships in the hangar. He spread them out on a table in one of the facility's offices and started explaining. "The Torvaki want their fighters back. They say the ships were stolen during the war and are still government property. The war ended 200 years ago. They never filed a claim with the auction house. They did not know the ships existed. No one did." "That is not my problem." Sung Kai sighed. "Legally, you are correct. Under galactic law, the 50-year abandonment rule is clear. But legal and practical are two different things. The Torvaki could make your life very difficult. Let them try. For days, Sun Kai worked on building their legal defense. He found old treaties and forgotten laws. He built arguments that were solid and strong. When the Torvaki government filed their lawsuit, he buried them in counterarguments so complex that their lawyers asked for a 6-month extension just to read everything. Meanwhile, another person arrived. The researcher Hyjin had contacted was a woman named No Yunbai. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with glasses and hair that she never remembered to brush. She specialized in extinct species and dead languages. "This is incredible," she said when she saw the Melvari data terminals. "This is the largest collection of Melvari writing ever found. It will take years to translate everything." "We do not have years," Tiho said. "Focus on the important files. I want to know why they collected these ships." Yunbai worked day and night. She hardly slept, surviving on coffee and excitement. Slowly, she began to unlock the secrets of the Melvari language. "They were not just collectors," she reported after a week of work. "They were preservers. They believed that a great destruction was coming, something that would wipe out civilizations across the galaxy. So they spent centuries gathering technology and knowledge. They wanted to save it." "What kind of destruction?" "I am not sure yet. The files mention something called the cycle, but I need more time to understand what that means." While Yunbai worked on the translation, a new threat appeared. A message came from someone calling himself Voral. The message was polite and carefully worded, but the meaning was clear. "The Syndicate has interests in your discovery," the message said. "We would like to propose a partnership. If you refuse, we will be forced to pursue other options." Tiho knew about the Syndicate. Everyone in space knew about the Syndicate. They were the largest criminal organization in the galaxy. They dealt in smuggling, weapons, and everything illegal. They had ships and soldiers and connections everywhere. "You cannot fight the Syndicate," Sun Kai said. "They are too powerful." "I will not give them anything." "They will kill you." "They can try." The Syndicate's attack was different from the others. They did not send ships to fight. They sent assassins to infiltrate. 3 alien killers managed to land on Vora 9 in a small shuttle that avoided the defense sensors. Tiho found them in the hangar trying to plant explosives on the phase runners. He did not have weapons. He only had his tools. The fight was short and brutal. Tiho had not been a soldier, but he had trained with soldiers. He knew how to move, how to strike, how to survive. When it was over, 2 assassins were unconscious and one was running back to his shuttle. "Let him go," Tiho said when Hyjin tried to stop the runner. "I want him to tell Voral what happened." A few days later, a new message came from Voral. "You have made your position clear. We respect strength. Perhaps we can negotiate a different kind of arrangement." Tiho did not respond. The Syndicate was testing him, looking for weakness. He would not give them anything to work with. The biggest change came when the human fleet arrived. Admiral Ko Jaiwan was a woman with gray hair and a face full of scars. She commanded a small fleet of Earth ships that had been stationed in a nearby system. When she heard about the Genesis Ark, she came immediately. "That ship is a piece of human history," she said when she met Tiho. 10,000 people disappeared on that vessel. Their families have been wondering what happened for 200 years. "I know," Tiho said. "I want to give them answers." "Then let us work together. I am not here to take anything from you. I am here to offer protection. In exchange, I want access to study the Genesis Ark. We want to download its data and learn what happened to the colonists." Tiho studied the Admiral's face. He had learned to read people in his years of business. He saw honesty in her eyes. She was not lying. "You can have access to the Genesis Ark," he said. "In exchange, your fleet will help defend this facility from anyone who tries to attack." "That is a fair deal." They shook hands. It was the first alliance Tiho had made since his discovery, but it would not be the last. The galaxy was watching. News of the human mechanic who had found a 2 trillion credit treasure was spreading to every corner of civilized space. Some people called him crazy, some called him greedy, but many others were starting to call him something else. They called him the man who would not sell. It became a story that people told in bars and markets. A human bought an abandoned garage. Aliens said it was cursed. The human did not care. He found treasure and refused to give it up. He fought pirates and corporations and governments. He made deals only when the deals were fair. Humans across the galaxy felt proud. For years, humanity had been the newcomers, the young species that did not understand how things worked. Now a human was showing the whole galaxy what stubbornness could accomplish. One night Tiho was working on one of the phase runners. He had started learning how it worked, studying its alien technology. Hyjin found him there, covered in grease and muttering to himself. "You should sleep," she said. "I will sleep when I understand how this engine works. You have been awake for 30 hours. Tiho stopped and looked at her. She was right. He was exhausted, but he could not stop. There was too much to learn, too much to protect. The Melvari spent centuries building this collection, he said. They believed something terrible was coming. I need to understand what they were preparing for. Yunbai is working on that. Yunbai is translating documents. I am studying machines. The machines might tell us things the documents do not. He turned back to the engine and found something strange. A hidden compartment that his scanner had missed. Inside was a small data storage device, covered in Melvari symbols. "What is that?" Hyjin asked. "I do not know yet." He took the device to Yunbai. She connected it to her translation equipment and started working. After several hours, she called everyone to her workspace. "I found something important," she said. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "This device contains coordinates, hundreds of coordinates spread across the galaxy." "Coordinates to what?" "Other Melvari caches. This is not the only collection. There are dozens more, hidden on moons and asteroids and abandoned stations across known space." The room went silent. If this one facility was worth 2 trillion credits, what were dozens of facilities worth? The number was beyond imagination. Tiho looked at the coordinates on the screen. Each one was a potential treasure. Each one was a piece of the Melvari's desperate effort to preserve civilization. "We have to find them," he said, "before someone else does." The hunt was about to begin. The expedition left Voronine on a cold morning. 3 ships flew in formation through the darkness of space. The Sky Dream carried Tiho, Hyjin, and Yunbai. 2 Earth military vessels followed close behind, commanded by Captain Cha Dongwon under Admiral Ko's orders. Their destination was the first set of coordinates from the Melvari data device. A small moon orbiting a gas giant in a system that no one had visited in centuries. "The Melvari chose their hiding places well," Yunbai said, studying her screens. "This system has no valuable resources, no habitable planets, no reason for anyone to come here." "Perfect for hiding treasures," Tiho replied. Back on Voronine, Sung Kai was managing the legal battles. Admiral Ko's fleet was maintaining security. They had left the first cache well protected while they searched for more. The journey took 2 weeks. When they arrived, the moon looked exactly like Voronine. Gray, dusty, dead. But their scanners found the same energy signatures they had discovered before. The second cache was smaller than the first. Only 12 ships. But among them were medical vessels filled with technology that could cure diseases that doctors currently considered incurable. "This equipment is worth more than ships," Yunbai said as she examined the medical machines. "With this technology, we could save millions of lives." They cataloged everything and moved on to the next coordinates. Over the following months, they visited 17 different Melvari caches. Each one held different treasures: ships, weapons, medical equipment, scientific instruments, data crystals filled with knowledge from civilizations that no longer existed. With each discovery, Yunbai learned more about the Melvari. She translated thousands of documents and slowly built a picture of who they had been. They were scientists, she explained one evening as the team gathered for dinner on the Sky Dream. Their entire society was built around research and preservation. They did not care about money or power. They only cared about knowledge. Then why did they collect weapons? Captain Dongwon asked. He was a serious man with a soldier's face and a scholar's curiosity. Because they understood that sometimes knowledge needs to be protected by force. They gathered weapons not to use them, but to keep them out of the hands of those who would. What about this cycle they mentioned? What were they afraid of? Yunbai looked at her notes. I am still working on that. The documents speak of patterns in galactic history, rises and falls. They believe that civilizations follow predictable paths: growth, then conflict, then collapse. They called it the cycle. And they thought it was coming again. They were certain of it. They spent their last centuries preparing, gathering, preserving. They wanted to ensure that when the collapse came, something would survive. Tiho listened quietly. He had started this journey looking for tools to rebuild his repair shop. Now he was uncovering secrets that could change the galaxy. There is one more thing, Yunbai said. The final coordinates. They point to a place called Melvar Prime, the Melvari homeworld. Has anyone been there since they died? No, every species has avoided it. They believe the curse started there. Then that is where we need to go. The others looked at him with concern. Even after everything they had seen, the idea of visiting the Melvari homeworld made them nervous. The curse is not real, Tiho said. We have proven that. The Melvari were not cursed. They were afraid of something and they wanted to keep others away from their secrets. The curse was just a story they spread to protect their work. What if you are wrong? Haijin asked. Then at least we will know the truth. Before they could reach Melvar Prime, they faced one more obstacle. A massive fleet intercepted them in open space. Ships from a dozen different species, all flying together under a single banner. This is the coalition of concerned species, a voice said over the communication system. You are ordered to surrender all Melvari artifacts and return to your home systems immediately. Tiho looked at the fleet on his screens. There were over 100 ships. Even with Captain Dongwon's vessels, they were hopelessly outnumbered. What do we do? Haijin asked. Tiho thought for a long moment. He could not fight this fleet, but maybe he did not need to. Open a broadcast channel, he said. Wide frequency. I want every ship in this fleet to hear what I say. I want every station and planet in range to hear. Haijin set up the broadcast. When the light turned green, Tiho spoke. My name is Park Tiho. I am a human mechanic from Earth. 6 months ago, I bought an abandoned garage on a dead moon. What I found there has made me the most wanted man in the galaxy. He paused, letting his words reach across space. The Melvari were not cursed. They were saviors. For centuries, they traveled across the galaxy gathering technology and knowledge. They did this because they believed a great collapse was coming. They wanted to ensure that when civilizations fell, something would survive to help rebuild. The coalition fleet was listening. No one had fired yet. The treasures I have found do not belong to me. They do not belong to any government or corporation. They belong to everyone. The Melvari gathered them for all species, not for any single group. I am not going to surrender these artifacts to a coalition that will divide them up for profit and power, but I am also not going to keep them for myself. I am going to share what I have found: medical technology that can save lives, scientific knowledge that can advance our understanding, historical records that can teach us about our past. The only things I will not share are weapons. The Melvari hid dangerous technology because they knew it could cause destruction. I will honor their wisdom. Some things should stay hidden." He stopped speaking and waited. The fleet did not move. For long minutes nothing happened. Then the messages started coming. Not from the coalition leaders, but from ordinary people across the galaxy who had heard his broadcast. Messages of support, messages of hope, messages from humans and aliens alike, praising the mechanic who was standing up against the powers of the galaxy. The coalition fleet began to break apart. Ships from different species started arguing with each other. Some wanted to attack, others wanted to negotiate, still others wanted to go home. Within hours, the coalition had dissolved. Some ships remained, but they kept their distance. They watched the three small vessels continue toward Melvar Prime but did not try to stop them. "That was a gamble," Captain Dongwon said afterward. "It was the truth," Tiho replied. "Sometimes the truth is the best weapon." The journey to Melvar Prime took another month. They passed through empty systems where no one had traveled in centuries. The darkness of space seemed thicker here, older somehow. When they finally arrived, the planet took their breath away. Melvar Prime was beautiful. It had been 400 years since any living Melvari walked its surface, but the planet had not died. Forests covered the continents. Oceans sparkled under alien stars. Cities rose from the landscape, their towers reaching toward the sky. "The planet's systems are still running," Yunbai said in wonder. The Melvari set up automated maintenance before they died. They wanted their world to survive them. They landed in the capital city. The streets were empty but clean. Buildings stood intact as if their owners had just stepped out for a moment. Everything was preserved, waiting. The Central Archive was the largest building in the city. Its doors opened when Tiho approached, recognizing him as the owner of Melvari property. Inside, they found what they had been searching for. A message, recorded 400 years ago by the last Melvari elder. Yunbai activated the recording. A hologram appeared before them. It showed a Melvari, tall and thin with large eyes that seemed sad and wise at the same time. "If you are hearing this message," the elder said, "then our work has succeeded. Someone has found what we preserved. Someone curious enough and stubborn enough to uncover the truth." The hologram smiled. "We knew our species was ending. A disease had spread among our people, one that we could not cure. We had perhaps 50 years before the last of us would die. We could have spent that time mourning. Instead, we chose to work. We traveled to every corner of the galaxy. We gathered ships and technology and knowledge from thousands of sources. We hid them in places where no one would think to look. And we spread stories about curses to keep others away until the time was right." The elder's expression grew serious. "The cycle is real. Civilizations rise and fall. Wars come. Plagues spread. Knowledge is lost. We have seen it happen before in records that go back millions of years, and we believe it will happen again. We do not know when, perhaps centuries from now, perhaps millennia. But when it does happen, the things we have gathered will be needed. Medical technology to fight disease. Scientific knowledge to rebuild what is lost. Historical records to remind people of what came before. To whoever hears this message, we give you a choice. You can sell what we have gathered for money. You can use it for power. Or you can do what we would have done. Preserve it, share what can help, hide what can harm, guide the galaxy through the darkness when it comes. The choice is yours. We have done what we could. Now the future belongs to you." The hologram faded. The room was silent. Tiho stood still for a long time. He thought about the small repair shop he had lost. He thought about the 12,000 credits he had spent on a dead moon. He thought about how far he had come and how much further he still had to go. "They chose well," Yunbai said softly. "What do you mean?" "They spread stories about curses to keep people away. But curses do not stop everyone. Curses stop people who believe in them. The Melvari knew that eventually someone would come who did not believe, someone stubborn enough to look past the stories, someone human enough to see opportunity where others saw fear. Tiho smiled. You give me too much credit. I do not think so. He looked at his team. Haijin, who had been with him from the beginning, Yunbai, who had unlocked the Melvari secrets, Captain Dongwon and his soldiers, who had protected them through danger. The Melvari gave us a choice, he said. I know what I am going to choose, but I want to know what you think. One by one they answered, and one by one they chose the same thing. They would become the new preservers. 5 years had passed since Tiho bought the abandoned garage on Vora 9. In that time the galaxy had changed, and so had he. The Tiho Foundation was now one of the most respected organizations in known space. It operated research stations on 12 planets. It funded medical programs that had saved millions of lives. It preserved historical artifacts that would have otherwise been lost or destroyed. Tiho ran everything from a small office on Kepler 7, the same station where his journey had begun. He could have worked from anywhere. He could have built a palace on Earth or a fortress on some private moon, but he preferred the old station with its flickering lights and rusted walls. It reminded him of who he was. A knock on his door interrupted his work. Haijin entered without waiting for an answer. She did that a lot now. The fleet is ready, she said. We launch in 3 hours. Good, is everyone on board? Everyone except you. Tiho smiled and stood up from his desk. His hair had started to gray at the edges, and his hands had new scars from years of working with alien machinery. But his eyes were the same, still curious, still stubborn. The fleet was gathered at the main docking bay. 12 ships of various sizes, crewed by humans and aliens working together. In the 5 years since the discovery, Tiho had built something remarkable. A team that included scientists, engineers, pilots, and historians from across the galaxy. Yunbai was waiting for him at the airlock. She had become the Foundation's chief researcher, leading a team of 50 scholars who studied the Melvari archives. We have identified 3 new cache locations, she reported. One appears to contain agricultural technology. Another has what might be a complete library from the Vorn civilization. The Vorn, I thought all their records were destroyed in the Second Expansion War. The Melvari saved copies before the war began. If we are right, this could be the most important historical discovery in centuries. Tiho nodded. Each new discovery reminded him why this work mattered. The Melvari had spent their final years preserving knowledge. He was spending his years making sure that knowledge was used well. Sung Kai appeared at his side. His cousin had left his government job to work for the Foundation full-time. He managed the legal and business operations, ensuring that their work could continue without interference. The Genesis Ark is ready for the ceremony, Sung Kai said. Good, the families have waited long enough. The Genesis Ark had been the first major project of the Foundation. They had spent 2 years recovering data from the old colony ship. They had discovered what happened to the 10,000 colonists who disappeared 200 years ago. The answer was both sad and beautiful. The ship had suffered engine failure far from any settled system. Unable to return home, the colonists had found a small planet in an unexplored region. They had landed there and built a new life. The colonists had thrived for decades before a plague wiped them out. Their descendants had not survived, but the records they left behind told the story of people who refused to give up, who built a civilization from nothing, who faced the unknown with courage. Today, the Genesis Ark would return to Earth. It would become a museum and memorial, honoring the colonists who had died so far from home. Their families, spread across dozens of planets, would finally have closure. Tiho watched the preparations from the observation deck. Below him, Crews loaded supplies onto the ships. Engineers ran final checks on engines and systems. Everything was organized and efficient, the result of years of practice. Admiral Ko Jaiwon joined him at the window. She had retired from active military service, but still advised the Foundation on security matters. "You have built something remarkable," she said. "I had help. You had an opportunity. Most people would have sold everything and retired to a comfortable life. You chose differently. The Melvari gave me that choice. I am just following their example." Ko smiled. "You are too modest. The Melvari were scientists. You are a mechanic. What you have done with their legacy is uniquely human." T-Ho thought about that. Humans had been in space for only 3 centuries. They were still newcomers compared to species that had traveled the stars for millennia. But in those 3 centuries, humans had earned a reputation. Other species called them stubborn, reckless, too curious for their own good. They did not know when to quit. They did not respect boundaries. They asked questions that made older species uncomfortable. T-Ho had embodied all those qualities. He had bought a cursed garage because he did not believe in curses. He had fought pirates and corporations because he refused to give up what was his. He had shared treasures with the galaxy because he believed it was the right thing to do. Maybe that was what the Melvari had been waiting for. Not just someone who could find their treasures, but someone who would use them well. The launch ceremony was brief. T-Ho spoke a few words about the mission ahead and the work that remained. Then the ships departed, heading out into the darkness of space. Hyjin piloted the lead vessel, as she always did. She had become the Foundation's chief pilot, leading expeditions to the furthest reaches of known space. The Sky Dream had been retired to a museum, replaced by faster and stronger ships, but Hyjin flew them all with the same skill and courage. The fleet disappeared into the stars. T-Ho watched until they were gone, then returned to his office to continue his work. Later that evening, a visitor came to the station. A young alien, barely old enough to travel alone. Its species was called the Verdani, a gentle people known for their love of learning. "Excuse me," the young Verdani said. "Are you Park T-Ho, the mechanic who found the Melvari treasures?" T-Ho looked up from his desk. "I am. What can I do for you?" "I want to join the Foundation. I want to help preserve knowledge like the Melvari did." T-Ho studied the young alien. Its eyes were bright with hope and curiosity. It reminded him of himself many years ago. "Why do you want to do this work?" he asked. "Because I heard what you said when the Coalition fleet tried to stop you. You said the treasures belong to everyone. You said knowledge should be shared and preserved. I believe that too. It is hard work, sometimes dangerous, and it does not pay very much." "I know, but some things are more important than money." T-Ho smiled. That was the answer he had been hoping to hear. "Welcome to the Foundation," he said. "We will find work for you." The young Verdani's face lit up with joy. It thanked him many times before hurrying off to find the personnel office. T-Ho returned to his work. Outside his window, ships came and went from the station. Humans and aliens walked together through the corridors. Somewhere in the galaxy, his fleet was searching for new caches. Somewhere else, researchers were studying Melvari technology. Somewhere else, medical teams were saving lives with equipment that should have been lost forever. The cycle that the Melvari feared might still be coming. Wars might still break out. Plagues might still spread. Civilizations might still fall. But when that happened, the Foundation would be ready. The knowledge preserved by the Melvari would survive, and from the darkness, new light would emerge. A message appeared on T-Ho's screen. It was from Hyjin, sent from the edge of known space. "We found something," the message said. "Another cache. This one is different, bigger than anything we have seen. I think the Melvari were saving the best for last. You need to see this." T-Ho read the message twice. Then he stood up and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" Sun Kai asked as he passed. To join the expedition. It sounds like they found something important. You are the director of the Foundation. You do not need to go on expeditions anymore. Ti-Ho stopped at the door and looked back at his cousin. I am also a mechanic, and mechanics need to see things for themselves. He left the office and headed for the docking bay. A ship was waiting for him, small and fast, ready to carry him to the edge of the galaxy. As he climbed aboard, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. A bankrupt mechanic with 12,000 credits, buying something no one else wanted. A garage full of dust and forgotten machines. A discovery that changed everything. The Melvari had spent their last years preparing for a future they would never see. Now Ti-Ho was doing the same, not because someone told him to, not because he expected reward, but because it was the right thing to do. The ship launched from the station and entered the blackness of space. Ti-Ho sat in the pilot's seat and set his course for the unknown. Behind him, Kepler-7 grew smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. Ahead of him, the galaxy stretched out in all directions, full of mysteries and wonders waiting to be found. Somewhere out there, another cache was waiting. Another piece of the Melvari legacy, preserved for 400 years, ready to be discovered. And Park Ti-Ho, the stubborn human mechanic who would not sell, was going to find it. The stars beckoned, the darkness welcomed him, and the future, whatever it held, was waiting to be written. His ship jumped to light speed and vanished into the night. The next chapter was beginning.